And he recommended that if she did get pregnant again, while she was, and she had her babies through, not hysterectomy, but C-section.
Okay.
When she did give birth, while she was still opened up, in that circumstances, there was a window that says you can tie the person's tubes and be morally correct at that time. So, without any other counsel that, you know, made any sense, that's what she went for. And she did get pregnant again. And she did have the baby, and she survived, and the baby survived, and everything's wonderful, you know. But there was that counsel from that moral theologian that we were never sure about, and I've read something since then that indicates any kind of isolation in the womb is not morally correct. Now, there's another situation where, you know, some husbands, Catholic husbands who are serious about their faith and read the Bible daily and all, but take it pretty literally, bring up the wives, be submissive to husbands. And in everything, you know, including these areas. So how do you deal with an answer, you know, how do you answer the husband? How do you, you know, counsel people? Those are the questions I have to ask you.
Okay. The first one is, that strikes me as very odd what the difference would be in terms of a tubal ligation when you're having a baby or not. That there's, I don't see why that would make any difference. Also, tubal ligation is not 100%. So if this is a matter of her life, this would not be acceptable at all.
Well, see, he told her that you couldn't have, once you're sewn up and everything, you just can't go and ask for a tubal ligation.
Okay, that's, I mean, that can flat, that's, if that's what he said, he's wrong, because the sin isn't in cutting skin, it's in intending the tubal ligation. In other words, that's not the moral object. It's not.
Well, the problem is, too, associated with this, is that the ethics committee at the local Catholic hospital agreed it should be done at that time. So, you know, there was no appropriate counsel given to her.
So, okay, so I'd say that's certainly mistaken. As far as the submission, so first of all, so John Paul II, I believe it's even in the Catechism, speaks of mutual submission, at least in Mulieris Dignitatem on the dignity and vocation of women. So if he thinks, if this husband thinks he speaks for the church more than one of the vicars of Christ who will likely be canonized as a saint, you should work that argument out on paper so it can be clearly demonstrated.
Right.
Also, if you read in Ephesians 5, there's a you know, the husband has a greater debt. She is to be obedient as okay, how does it go? As he said, mutual, all be obedient to. Maybe the sisters have this memorized. I should have this on the top of my head. I should have this. But be obedient. It's 1 to what's it?
Sister saying, as Christ loved the church, wives be submissive to your husbands, but husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church.
Right, but right. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Is that what you're looking for?
Right, but right before that, the very first, even before that.
Be submissive to each other.
That's right. That's what it said. It's not exactly that wording, but and then it spells it out that there's this order. Right. But right, husband love your wives. So anyway, the reading of that, you could argue order. I mean, certainly in St. Paul there's a clear order of you could even say it goes as far as submission. But the reading of that, certainly there's also the headship. This is referring to the headship of Christ. So if the headship of Adam is fallen, you know, the Eve, if the idea is, so let's say, if the man is simply to be followed, then it doesn't matter whether his will is with God or following Christ, or whether his will is not, she's just supposed to follow him. I think that would be an easy argument to reject, namely that God is a higher authority than her husband. So that being the case, we can now say that his headship derives from the headship of Christ. And if that's, in other words, she should reject the headship of fallen Adam, redeemed Adam, okay, maybe. But so, insofar as his headship is opposed to God, he is to be rejected and taught to, and women have a teaching role. I would say, you say the head and the heart. You could say, head and the heart was that if he is has headship, which he does, I think that's right. But the woman has a teaching role. That's not to be denied. And so his headship, Eve would be foolish, to follow. You could say, to follow Adam's headship. The solution is for Adam to have his headship in Christ, which is a headship of service and generosity, not of domination. And if that's the case, she'd be delighted. In fact, the strong. If he is protecting and providing, the stronger the better. Whereas if he is, once this breaks down differently, right? If she's helpmate, so if he's protector provider. When that breaks down, he becomes the predator and the parasite. Whereas if she's helpmate, when that breaks down, she becomes the obstacle. You see, so we see this how this works. But so if he is a predator, and you see this like in movies, there are these. I've read an article on this. Someone observed this. The protagonists, the male protagonists, were these kind of wimpy, androgynous. They were men, you could tell, but not if they just wore pink, you might not be sure. And so because if men are predators, then a woman wants the weaker and the less dangerous, the better. And that's a reasonable principle. Whereas if his protection and provision is certain and is clear and he's right with God, the stronger the better. People would be afraid to criticize her in public because of what happened to them, when the husband comes. This is the idea. So in terms of headship, I think Adam has a distinct role as protector and provider, and you see the gifts of masculinity and femininity are distinct, and that's beautiful, and there's terrible confusion and problems arise in society when that's denied. In fact, so if only people like Saddam Hussein and Hitler are telling men to be strong, we're going to be in bad shape. The church needs to tell men to be strong. And also, things are better when men understand they have a special role of protecting and providing, as opposed to, well, Adam, you don't have any role of protecting and providing. You're just there. Well, you can see how then. So he shouldn't consider women as perhaps vulnerable. He shouldn't consider that he has a special role to develop in terms of service and generosity on account of his gifts, which he has an advantage to power. So headship, I think, is to be affirmed, not to be denied. But there's mutual submission, and there's first of all submission to God. If he is contradicting God, that's a headship. That's to be rejected and corrected. And she has a role in teaching and bringing about that correction.
I always said to people who think this way, if the man is submissive to Christ, the woman won't have any problem being submissive to him.
That's it. That's it. That's right. So, yes, dear sister.
Father, I have a question just about your thought. You talked about when you look at the research, still obviously the majority of Catholics don't understand the teaching. Maybe you've never heard the teaching. You talked about perhaps the priests don't speak about it in the way that they need to. Not always talked about in marriage prep. So I think as we look at the new evangelization, where do you feel like our efforts would be best targeted, I guess? Like where do you start? Where's the most effective place to go?
In other words, in terms of audience?
Yes, and sharing the teaching so that it will be heard and passed on then.
Anywhere you can.